Hi, folks. I'm Dennis Foley. Thanks so much for joining us. Our guest, teacher, author, and children's advocate Jonathan Kozol says his new book is not meant to make readers comfortable. It's about the tragedy and return of segregated schooling in America. The title of his book, The Shame of the Nation. A personal and perhaps uncomfortable conversation with Jonathan Kozol next. This is America. This is America is made possible by Hyundai Motor America, maker of the 2006 Sonata. The National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. Korean Air, the Korea National Tourism Organization. The city of Paducah, Kentucky, located in McCracken County, home of the Paducah Artist Relocation Program, and Paducah Bank. And the American Life TV network. Over the years, I must say that I have had the privilege, the honor to interview Jonathan Kozol just a number of times, and he is always on the cutting edge of what is happening in the education system in America. And the picture that he paints today is a bleak one in many, many ways. Jonathan, good to see you once again. There are two worlds of education, aren't there?
There are indeed, and an awful lot of Americans, I think, are unaware of what has happened in these past 10 or 15 years in which those two worlds have become more divided than ever. Mm-hmm. Segregation, racial segregation, has come back with a vengeance into U.S. public education. The schools I visit, and I've just visited 60 schools over the past 5 years, the inner city schools I visit are not just kind of segregated. They're absolutely segregated. I'll be in a school of 5,000 kids, a big high school in Los Angeles, and I won't see one white kid the whole day. I mean, if you took a photograph of the typical inner city classroom that I visit, at fourth grade in New York City, in the South Bronx, in Chicago, in Seattle, my book goes straight across the country. If you took a color photograph of a class of children in any of these schools I visit, it would be indistinguishable from those old photographs of classrooms in Mississippi back in 1925 or 1930. And what's heartbreaking to me especially is that the most segregated state for minority children in the public schools today is not in the South, it's New York. New York is the most segregated state in the nation. Next come Illinois and Michigan because of Chicago and Detroit, and then Los Angeles. Although if Washington, D.C. were included as a state, that would be one of those five also. But let me just interrupt you. Just hit this right over the head. So you're really saying there is black education and white education? Absolutely, or to be more accurate, black and brown education. Hispanic, because the deeply segregated schools I visit are always a mix of black and Latino kids. Let me just run down a couple of things that I picked out of the book. This is going back a couple of years, but the statistics would probably be close. In Chicago, 87% black and Hispanic. D.C., 94%. 82% in St. Louis. 78% Philadelphia, Cleveland. 84% black and Hispanic. In the inner city schools, Los Angeles, 95% in Detroit. 88% Baltimore. 75% in New York. And just to cap that off, in the neighborhood that I know the best, the South Bronx of New York, as you know, I've written 3 books that take place there. In that neighborhood, which I was visiting again yesterday, I had a reunion with the kids that I've known all these years. There are 11,000 children in the public elementary schools in this neighborhood. Of those 11,000, 26 are white. 26. Yeah. Now I'm not good at arithmetic, Dennis, because I went to a progressive school where they didn't force me to do more arithmetic than I wanted, but I can do that much math. That's a segregation rate of 99.8%. So, you know, some people say to me, should you be using a word like apartheid in the cover
title
of my book? And I say, well, if you want to be technically accurate, you can say this: 0.2 of 1 percentage point mark the difference between legal apartheid in the South 50 years ago and the kind of apartheid that we now have in almost every northern city in America today. And I'm just going to add one more thing. I'm terrible because, you know, my favorite novelist was Faulkner, so I'm great on run-on sentences. But also little kids are good at that, and I learn it from them. You know how they keep saying "and"? That? I love that. Anyway, the heartache is that you come into a new city and you don't know anything about it. Black teachers always say this to me in a bitter joke. They say, Jonathan, you come to any city in America, you want to see a really segregated school, just ask for one that's named for Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks. Typically, those are always the most segregated, poorly funded, physically decrepit, most discouraging schools with lowest test scores. And they also tend to, you know, kids don't like me to stick with abstractions. The kids say, if you visit our school and you want to know what our lives are like, describe it as we see it and breathe it. And these schools are smelly. That's the word the kids use. The basement cafeterias where these kids are herded along for lunch for these squalid feedings are animalistic. And these are the schools that are named for Dr. King. I always wonder why we name horrible schools like that for Dr. King, someone black folks love. I always think we ought to name them for people they don't like, people black folks don't like call it William Bennett Academy of High Personal Morality or something, but save the name of Dr. King for a school that lives up to his dream. That's my belief.
You asked the kids to write a little essay on the school, what they saw when they came in. What was their experience of going to school in these in the PS30s in the South Bronx and so on, 65, whatever it is.
That's right.
And say, what came back to you on those papers? What were those kids saying?
And this is
what their experience of going to school day in and day out.
These were third graders, and actually it wasn't PS30. It was another school in the South Bronx, where the teacher had assigned the paper to the children and then invited me to visit. And they said that they were very simple, pure, and heartbreaking statements. That one little girl wrote, you have all the things, and we don't have all the things. Can you help us? As though I had power to do something about it. One said, you have clean places to study and play. We have no clean places. Another little girl with a wonderful misspelling, she said, I wish that all the little kings could have the same good schools. She meant little kids. She said little kings. And I thought that was kind of nice. But the one that moved me most was the one who said, I wish my school were the most beautiful school in the whole wide world. She meant wide, but she wrote why. And I put that up on my desk. I never try to edit the words of children. I print them as they write them. One other little girl I'm very close to in the Bronx, well, she's a teenager now, but I met when she was a baby. Well, I met when she was in kindergarten, actually, a little girl called Pineapple. Plump, sweet, smart, bossy little girl. Oh, bossed me around as long as I've known her. She always looks at this suit and says, is that old thing the only suit you have? She's a wonderful girl. She once said to me when she was in 5th grade, Jonathan, what's it like over there? And when she said over there, I tried to avoid it because it embarrassed me. I knew what she meant, but it embarrassed me. So I said, you mean where I live in Massachusetts? Because she knew I live in Massachusetts. She looks me right in the eye and she says, no, that's not what I mean. You know what I mean. I said, no, I don't, dear. And she said, over there where people like you can live. And so, I mean, if I go into these schools